What would you say is the biggest obstacle you faced in your career?
Well, probably, and it's interesting because I've just joined an organization to try to help with this, but I would say probably the biggest thing is being female, and being female in a very, very male-dominated industry. It hasn't changed at all since I graduated from undergrad. I mean, it's kind of sad. But from the commercial real estate side,
right?
From the commercial real estate
side.
I mean, if you go to a typical commercial real estate meeting today, it's still probably 10%, maybe if you're lucky, 20% women. And I don't know why, and I haven't figured it out. But I'm getting to the point in my career where I can actually donate some time to it and try to help figure it out and maybe try to change it, because it's pretty bad. I mean, every other profession, the women graduating out of law school, medical school, accounting school, I mean, so many other professions, it's 50 or over. And we're still down. Finance and real estate are still down in the 10 to 20%. And the group I've just joined, it's called Women on Boards by 2020. And the idea is Women on Boards 2020, and it's 20% women on public and private boards by 2020. And it's a campaign, it's a PR campaign to raise awareness. And by doing this, I've started talking with board members and and I kind of sort of see the reasoning. If nobody goes into finance and real estate, and they don't get the degree, if the women don't get the degree, or only a few get it, then they get into their careers. And then if they want to be normal, well, not normal, but if they wanted to have children, let's say, if they don't keep going, they can't get into a boardroom because they don't get the C-suite jobs, right?
You were the first woman president of the American Real Estate Society.
First and only.
I was just going to finish.
Pretty bad.
And only. Which
That's pretty bad.
Aries is the #1 academic organization, I would say, in the United States, if not the world. It's really looked to as a really preeminent. And I admire you for deciding that you wanted to be. How did that happen, and how did you feel about what you accomplished?
I must admit, I would have thought by now we'd have more than just me, because I was it over almost 10 years ago. Basically, what happened was, again, I think I mentioned that I studied international real estate as my doctoral thesis, and I was very, very much interested in the international marketplaces, and I had traveled as a kid, and I really liked the cultures and liked that side of it, and I wanted to do international. So first couple of years I was in that organization, we were creating a sub-organization. It was called the International Real Estate Society. It was actually being organized to be an umbrella organization over a bunch of sister societies, American Real Estate Society being one of them, so it would act like a UN. So I did a lot of the formative work in starting that group. There was a core of us that did that. And so from that, I became president of that first. So I was president of the International Real Estate Society first. And then after a couple years of that obligation, I then felt like I had enough background and enough experience with the organization to run for the president's position at the American Real Estate Society.
The funny story about women, and I had been in commercial most of my adult life, so I know what it was like to go in a boardroom with a lot of bankers and men. They didn't want to talk to the woman, no matter how much experience, no matter what you did on the job. And when you became president, you gave me the women's breakfast. At that time was a very small, and we were supposed to meet in the coffee place. They didn't want to give us a separate room, and I got speakers, and I had a lot of attendees, so we moved it. So we moved it, but people in charge didn't want to move it because they thought I was going to be spending all their money, and they weren't going to get enough. So they came and checked on me in the middle of you and I think Elisa Say speaking.
To make sure there were people there?
Because they'd been argued with me all the way that they didn't want enough breakfast and they didn't want enough space, and They didn't see why it had to be. And when they walked in, and we were all really engaged and learning and connecting with one another, I know that it changed their perspective of the need for this in the American.
Oh yeah, when I first suggested, they're like, there aren't any women. What women are going to come? Nobody's going to come. I was like, no, there's plenty of us here. You just don't notice us because
right.
we're so there's one in each room type of thing because it was.
And when I took it, and then I had for the formal speakers, which you were one of the first. And they walked in and they saw that. I'm not using names or anything, but they realized, my gosh, we have a lot of women and there's a lot of interest, and this is just like a session. I mean, people are getting up, they're speaking, they're asking questions, and then I gave it to Sophie, who from Roosevelt, who ended up developing it from there. So there is, as the world is becoming interconnected, it's even more important for women to be at the leadership of some of these real estate
absolutely. I mean, the research shows, and that the Women on Board's 2020 thing, I mean, if you get on their website, they've got all the research there, and it clearly shows that it is important to have other voices at the table. Diversity is important. It's important for the bottom line. Just like green issues are important for the bottom line, so are diversity issues. And so it's pretty ridiculous that we don't, but it's not solely that they're not wanted. Part of it too is, and again, I don't want to get political, and I don't want to throw stuff on the table. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is, if somebody decides to have children, somebody has to take care of those children. You can't just have children and say, oh, they're going to raise themselves and we're going to be done. So either you have to have a partner that's willing to, somebody has to go ahead and somebody has to go behind. And traditionally, it's always been the male gets to go ahead and the woman stays behind. And until we provide the correct services, I mean, you go to other parts of the world and there's maternity leave and it's not held against you. There is daycare available that's affordable. There is convenient daycare. I mean, one of my panel members, you have to, as part of being Women on the Board chapters, you would do an event. And we had a panel, and we had one token male on the panel. And the reason I chose him was he was a developer out of Boston, and he did the first office park that had daycare in it as an amenity to the office park, i.e. they were using it to sell tenants, to get tenants, and they just wrapped it into the common area maintenance fee. We don't see that. But why don't we? I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, you have young Google, you have a Google campus, and you have a lot of young tech startup companies going into that campus. Those young tech startup companies are going to have young families, and if there's no way to help take care of the kids, somebody ends up having to drop out or drop back.
Right.
And once you start dropping back, then it's difficult to catch back up.
And it's interesting, years ago I interviewed Peter Roberts, and he still feels that way today. He's the CEO of Jones Lang LaSalle Americas, and he said, the people that want to buy our products and our services are more diverse, are more global. So we have to have people at the table that represent them, that can ask the question,
right.
They can understand their perspective. It only makes sense to grow women and minorities in positions. It's not a political thing.
No, Real Estate 101 says understand your consumer.
Yeah, right.
And build what the consumer wants. Well, if you don't have the consumers sitting around the table, how do you understand what they want?
Find that a lot of realtors that take our programs, yes, maybe they sell mostly single houses, but then somebody that trusts them will ask them to help them with a deal. So they have to be knowledgeable. They have to know at least how to get the research, where to go to get the research. And so I think that even though NAR probably has more women realtors that sell single-family homes and more men are in the commercial part of this, we're going to see a shift where women are across the board affected in all these areas. I know I was lucky young because I had 4 children, and my husband and I divided up the tasks, so when we build a big development, I could go and help run the project, so that we had someone that took care and that he would hold back and watch the kids. And I think that if we value that a lot of the consumers in all areas of the business are going to be women and minorities, then we need to teach the professionals how to work with them and have women at higher levels and respect them for it. So I think you were the forefront, and I really got a kick out of knowing you through your experience at Aries, and then now all these years later not seeing another woman follow in your shoes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that takes mentoring or...
Every year I try to get somebody to run, and every year people say, I'm too busy, you know, and it is hard. I mean, when you've got children and you've got your job and you've got, you know, it is hard. And I think we've got even more issues coming up over the next 20 years with the sandwich generation. I don't know if I've talked to you about the sandwich generation, but I feel like not only do a lot of the younger people that are entering the workforce and they're going to start having families, they've also got to deal with the baby boomer parent, and all of a sudden they're just going to be pulled. And our companies, our you know, our social fabric has got to figure out what to do with this, because it's going to get really hard if you've got, you know, a mother with Alzheimer's and then you've still got a kid in high school and you've got to manage those tasks, and it's going to be hard on both parents.
Well,
and so men are going to be pulled apart, you know, pulled too, and it just adds a whole other level of stress.
So that we need some type of really political to look at this and start to create companies that provide so that we can have great workers.
Right.
I hear this
That's
on
what I mean,
CNN where they say we can't get enough people for the jobs. And when I was starting out in real estate, I saw that some of the great firms taught open facilities to teach workers to be great at their job. And when I got my doctorate, we would go to Motorola University, Hamburger, McDonald's, and they would train their people. So now in real estate, this used to be a great field for training. I think that these companies are going to have to think of better training programs to prepare their workers for the life and the work so that they can both do a good job and live a quality life. And as America, we're different than a lot of countries around the world when it comes to this.
Right, but if you think about it, I mean, actually one of my universities, out of those 5 I was at, one of them, and I was very fortunate because they provided it the years I really needed it, and that's when I was building the program at the University of San Diego. But that university had a daycare on site. And so I could literally drop my child off and go right to work, and I didn't have to worry about commuting and you know, getting back to the daycare in time to pick my child up before the evil 5 o'clock.
And there are other
triples.
things that they could do by sharing jobs, being able to work for home. There are other flexibilities that we can create into the working programs, and maybe even into these graduate programs we offer services where
even the students, yeah,
right,
absolutely.
like our courses that are online, the students are very grateful that they can take an MBA online, but yet they have to learn
manage time.
Well, my courses are not easy.
Right.
There's a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And
manage time,
and they don't necessarily come in prepared for how much time it's going to take them.
Right, the expectations.
Just because it's online doesn't make it all that easy, and they have to learn the technology that goes along with it.
Right.
So we're kind of on a new bridge, but I think it's a great way to go. I also know that our students, and I know I've seen you mentor, I feel like you've mentored me with all the projects we've done together. But I think mentorship is really important, especially for women.
Absolutely. I mean, the research shows, and again, I mean, you know, I just look at my own life, and I would not have ever really thought about being a professor, except that I had a female professor. If I'd never had a female, and I only had one, but I had one in the business school. But I did have one, and she mentored. You know, she suggested to me, because I went to her to ask if I should do a graduate degree, just a master's. She's like, "Why don't you do a PhD?" And I was like, "No." You know, even though my mother had a PhD, but it was in history. But all the business professors at that time, and I'm sure for you too, it was men. And so, you know, but if I hadn't had her, I probably never would have done the doctorate.
It was interesting that the heads of my doctoral degree, they said I was giving up real estate. I didn't think there was any teaching profession for me in real estate. And they said, no, the field is young and you can do this and we're going to help you do it. And they helped me publish and they helped give me teaching assignments. And then we traveled. After I got my degree, they made me go to Russia and Finland as part of my program and teach abroad to get the feeling. And so when the heads of your program respect women in these positions and can help hold their hand and say, you're going to do this, it opens doors that I would never have thought could be opened. So I'm hoping that what you're saying will help us maybe have a mentor program in our graduate program here that could really help students see that they could not only be in residential, but they could take and be in commercial.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. I mean, there are an awful lot of professionals out there that are, you know, very successful in the real estate world. You know, many of them, and they're ready to, you know, kind of give back. I mean, a lot of people are looking for opportunities and mentorship. At least that's what I'm finding, particularly in Charleston. That I've got a lot of retirees, semi-retires that you know are moving down to the sun, and then they're looking for, you know, they don't want to play golf all the time, and being around students does keep you young, and so they're getting as much out of it as the students are. So it's well worth the effort. It is tricky to set up mentorship programs. I've worked with them at all of the schools I was at. And the hardest ones are the ones you're trying to force, because, you know, it's like a forced marriage type thing. And if somebody doesn't, you know, pull their part of the bargain, then everybody's disappointed. And so you have to be, I mean, you have to be real careful and try to make sure that you've got, you know, a truly motivated student that's really going to go to the meetings and really going to make the effort. But then you also need the professional that's not going to be too busy, so that they have to keep canceling on the lunches, or, you know, so it's not the easiest thing to set up, but certainly trying to set up opportunities for maybe not a formal mentorship program, but opportunities for them to meet lots of professionals and create some of these mentorships that are more you know, from the ground up, kind of swell up. Might be
informal.
Might be a better way, at least to start exploring with it, because the formal ones do tend to sometimes not work so well. Another thing we did at San Diego, which I kind of liked, was a shadow program where professionals agreed to be shadowed, and then somebody could actually shadow and see what that job does.